Yemen is more closely related to Iran, and we'll speak about their war crimes type of munitions that they're firing at Israel. The bombs or the missiles that they're now firing are designed to disperse in the air and to basically create hundreds, if not thousands, of cluster munitions that will target Israeli civilians indiscriminately.
Is firing new missiles at Israel. Israel is about to take over Gaza City, and many Western leaders are voicing support for a Palestinian state. Take a look at this clip over here with Jonathan Concricus, the former spokesperson for the IDF. Listen to what he says on the news over here about what's going on and what we can expect in the near future. So we'll watch this clip together and then talk about it. But first, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
All right, welcome back. Israeli airstrikes hitting an area near the Yemen presidential complex and Houthi missiles bases in the capital of Sana'a earlier today. According to Israeli officials, the strikes coming just days after Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels fired cluster munitions towards Israel. Amid this, Israel pushing ahead, entering its first stages of a planned assault of Gaza City after approving a plan to take it over that includes calling up to 60,000 reservists for an expanded military operation. So here to discuss this and a lot more is retired Lieutenant Colonel and former spokesperson for the IDF Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, Jonathan Concricus. Great to have you here. Welcome to Sunday Report. Let's get to this. An Israeli Air Force investigation. Friday's night, they had a ballistic missile attack there from Yemen. It's found that for the first time, the Houthis have used projectile with a cluster bomb warhead. What do you make of this? I mean, are we getting to a new stage of this war?
Yeah, hello, and thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure to be on Newsmax. I would distinguish between the two items. Yemen is more closely related to Iran, and we'll speak about their war crimes type of munitions that they're firing at Israel. The bombs or the missiles that they're now firing are designed to disperse in the air and to basically create hundreds, if not thousands, of cluster munitions that will target Israeli civilians indiscriminately.
Wow.
And under international law, cluster bombs are prohibited.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Houthis are firing them indiscriminately at Israeli civilians is another war crime perpetrated against Israel, against which Israel is defending itself, and Israel just carried out significant strikes in Sana'a, as you told, and we're waiting for BDA, exactly what the consequences on the ground, how many terrorists were killed, what kind of damage was inflicted. It'll take a few, maybe half an hour, and then we'll have better results.
Yeah, we're still
the situation in Gaza is much more complex.
Right, and we're waiting for that information. We're following this closely here this morning. But Lieutenant Colonel, I want to get your thoughts on this. Israeli authorities, they're warning here that hospitals in northern Gaza, they're stripping gear for this mass evacuations of civilians. It's a military offensive is getting underway. Where do you see this going? I know that you've got people there in Gaza that are starving. There's reports that they do want to get aid in there, but Hamas is not allowing that aid to get in. What's the next step in this, in all of this? I think people want to know.
Let's disambiguate that for a second. The maneuver and the attack has not yet started, and it'll take some time before it does.
Okay.
I think the time frame will be more likely first or second week of September, but up until then, Israel is doing what we call staging operations and preparing first to encircle those parts of Gaza that Israel has not yet conquered and cleared of Hamas terrorists.
Yeah.
And then once the directive is given, and here's the important point, the directive will not be given if Hamas chooses to hand over the hostages and surrender. And that is what Israel is waiting for the three countries that support Hamas and keep Hamas alive, which is Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, for them to tell Hamas that the game's up and that they need to hand over the hostages. Otherwise, the Israelis will go in and take over Gaza City.
Right.
And it can be avoided, and I think it should be avoided. And I think that Hamas, out of a concern for Gazans, out of a concern for themselves, they should do that. But if they don't, Israel is now ready and staging to go in and do what's necessary in order to eventually defeat Hamas and bring back safety to Israelis.
I want to get your thoughts here because there's a lot of talk about recognizing it as a Palestinian state. You've got these Europeans like the UK, France, they want to formally now recognize a Palestinian state. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he had some harsh words for that plan, and he's actually praising President Trump. Watch.
Europe has gone through the destruction of the Jews. 80 years later, that's what they have to say. They attack the Jewish state and they give a prize for those who would destroy the one and only Jewish state. Shameful. I think we've been very fortunate to have a leader in the United States who doesn't act like the European leaders, who doesn't succumb to this stuff.
So your take on that, you've got these other countries that we're allies with that are saying, well, we're going to recognize this as a Palestinian state. Does that now create tension between our allies?
Yeah, there's so much to say about it. It is so disconnected from reality. And sadly, if these European countries would actually take the time and listen to people on the ground, to Israelis and to Palestinians, they would understand that nobody is interested in that type of solution anymore. That's a thing of history, of the past, and the Palestinians don't want that. Israelis, after October 7, I think, have become disenfranchised with the entire idea, and I think are much more realistic. What those declarations do is they strengthen Hamas, they make it more difficult for Israel to get hostages out, and they lessen the chances of a ceasefire in Gaza because Hamas understands that they can play hardball and they can play tough because they have the support of European countries. So very, very unproductive, very detrimental to Palestinians, because what this does is keeps Hamas alive. It keeps Palestinians under Hamas's oppression, and it puts us further away from actually solving the situation. And solving the situation means getting rid of Hamas. And if European countries are declaring that they're going to recognize a Palestinian state, who's going to benefit from that politically? Obviously Hamas.
That's the argument. Is Hamas, is this a win for them? And are they now recognizing?
It's a win for Hamas.
Exactly. We have to leave it there. Lieutenant Colonel of the IDF, Jonathan Concricus, thank you so much for coming on.
All that happens when European leaders make overtures towards a Palestinian state is that it empowers Hamas. Hamas, every time that they've come to the table or been willing to have a discussion about ceasefires in exchange for hostages and all of these different deals that have come to the table, Hamas always backs out of it. And it's usually tied to European nations making symbolic statements that they're going to be open to the idea of endorsing a Palestinian state, supporting a Palestinian state, or whatever the case may be. Don't forget that October 7th, 2023 didn't happen because the Palestinians didn't have a state. It happened because they did have a state. And they elected Hamas in 2005. Hamas has been in power for the last 20 years. And what they did with it was they turned it into a terror zone. They could have taken all of that aid, all of the billions of dollars that were coming in. They could have transformed that region into something that was really something beautiful, something that would have been a tourist destination, I'd imagine. It's right on the beach, right on the water. And instead, they used all of the funds to keep their people in squalor, blame it on the Israelis, and then turn the entire area into a terrorist training camp with miles and miles of tunnels underneath schools and hospitals and what have you, in order to make a complete operation against Israel, which culminated on October 7th, 2023. So this fictitious idea of a Palestinian state, which nobody at this point in time is in support of. Unfortunately, it's not something that you need two to tango. You need two people, two nations that can come to the table and say, look, let's just draw up a simple plan. You take this side, we'll take this side, and we all live peacefully together. But nobody is on that bandwagon at this point. And nobody really ever was. Unfortunately, there were never people to talk to. Even the more moderate group of Palestinians in the so-called West Bank, not Gaza, which is run by Hamas, but the West Bank run by the Palestinian Authority, even they, who are, again, in theory more moderate, but still have policies on their books like pay for slay, where if somebody does a terrorist activity against Israel from their region, their families are reimbursed and given reparations in order to sort of reward them for the terrorist activities that they've embraced. The Palestinians, unfortunately, have never wanted a two-state solution. You won't find ever on the campuses or wherever people are marching in solidarity with Palestine, it's never, we want a two-state solution, we want to live side by side, that's what we want, that's what we're after. It's from the river to the sea, which is the entirety of the land of Israel. And when you have somebody coming for you on both sides that is only out for your destruction, not about creating the construction of a Palestinian state, it's the destruction of the state of Israel, then Israel needs to defend itself in the way that it needs to, without giving any sort of extra added credence, bonus reward for the activities that took place on October 7th. And if you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.